Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series. Can we save the Oakland A's? And the saving of the A's is not going incredibly well here in the 2039 season, trying to repeat as World Series champions and win a title for the third time in 4 years here in 2039. Unfortunately, we are off to a very mediocre 14-14 start on the season, but only 2.5 games behind in the division and only a game and a half out of the wild card spot at this point. Dealing with a couple of very significant injuries as we head into the month of May. The franchise, Jake Ortega, is out for another 3 months with a broken hand. And the young starting pitcher, Mark Blumenschein, going to be missing another 2 to 3 months with a sprained ankle. So our number 4 starter and our starting center fielder and number 3 hitter, who is the defending American League Most Valuable Player, both laid up until after the All-Star break in all probability. We also have made a contract offer to one of our youngsters, the top prospect in our organization, a guy who has not played in the majors yet. Juan Pimentel, we're offering him 10 years at $85 million total. The last 2 years, which are the most expensive years of the potential contract, will be team options. He's hitting a robust .352 with 9 homers and 25 ribbies and 108 at-bats in Las Vegas. So not much for him to prove down there. We're just trying to get him to also be able to play first base. We think his contact and his home run power could both be excellent. He's durable, good speed, not a great fielder, but he can play basically anywhere in the infield. Don't love that he's unlikely to draw a lot of walks over the course of his career, but I think that locking him up for the next decade could be a good move for us. We don't necessarily have an obvious spot in the lineup for him right now, with Mr. Landine, Mr. Toribio, and Mr. Alcindor playing second, third, and short for us, and Bowers at first base. But would expect that we will be seeing Pimentel in not too long, regardless of whether or not he signs this contract. And we have locked up the number 12 prospect in baseball, Juan Pimentel, for the next decade. I can show you the deals on that contract at this point. As I mentioned, 10 years, $85 million total. Certainly going to be making a lot more than the major league minimum for the next few seasons, but our hope is that when he gets into his later arbitration years and a couple of potential free agent years, that we'll be saving some big money there. And we do have team options in his early 30s, $12.5 million for the last 2 years of the contract. Hopefully that will be a option that we will gladly exercise because he's become an outstanding major league player, but does give us a little bit of insurance if things don't work out. So could be seeing Pimentel relatively soon. As I mentioned, not necessarily an obvious spot for him right now, with Landine, Alcindor, Bowers, and Toribio all kind of locked in as important infielders for us. But I honestly could see myself making a move potentially away from Andy Toribio at some point. The 31-year-old is having a solid year for us, 296 average and a 111 WRC plus. It's the best offensive season that he's had in several years. He got off to a rousing start in his first couple years in the majors and has been a below-average offensive player the past 3 years. Given that he's hitting well this year, I don't think there's any need to do something urgently. But with Toribio's outstanding defense and the fact that he's an older guy, not paying him a ton of money as he's heading into 2 team option years, Toribio could certainly be an outstanding utility infielder for us if we do decide that we want to get Pimentel into the major league lineup sooner rather than later. Given that we still think there's some improvement that Pimentel can make, though, for the time being, we're just going to keep playing him every day in AAA, even though he's making pretty good money right now for a AAA player. And as we head towards mid-May, we're still kind of just scuffling along, win one, lose one, 20-20 record, just about a quarter of the way into the season, 2.5 behind in the division, and 2 games out of the wild card. So going to give things a little bit of time before we get rash with any decision making. We're not even 50 games into the season yet. We'll be making one move, though. Kevin Carmichael, the reliever that we picked up in a trade this past offseason, who's done a really nice job as a lefty out of the pen for us, day-to-day for the next week with a sore elbow. We're not going to try to have him pitch through it, and given that we do like our pitching depth in AAA, we're just going to be very careful with him and put him on the IL to ensure that he hopefully has enough time to recover. As one of you has noted, it is kind of weird. I can't remember who noted this, but there is some weird stuff going on with some of the caps. I don't know why he still has the Blue Jays baseball cap on when we made a trade for him last November. And we ended up bringing up Jeff Tisch, former 10th round draft pick, played with us briefly in 2037, had a injury issue a year ago. Has been pretty respectable this year in Las Vegas for us, so we'll give the right-hander an opportunity to see what he can do. Also, we are swapping Kamani O'Banner out of the number 5 spot in the rotation for Bobby Garland. O'Banner took over when Blumenshine had the injury, put him into the rotation. Unfortunately, hasn't gone incredibly well for him as a starter. Just 2 starts, so we haven't given him an incredible chance. But a 10.12 ERA over the course of just 8 innings. Certainly not impressive, and we'll see what Mr. Garland, who has been pitching pretty well this year, can do for us as the number 5 starter, a role he has often held for us over the past few seasons. And we've made it to June 1st, and we're sitting here at 28-28, so pretty easy to do the math to figure out that we had a 14-14 month in the month of May. Looking at our team statistics, we're definitely getting unlucky. 500 record on the year, 5.5 games behind now. Pythagorean formula suggests we should be 32-24, 4 games better, which would make us feel a lot better about where we are. Offense has not been great, 10th in the American League in runs scored at this point. Pitching, solid as usual, 3rd in the American League in runs allowed. Solid defense, solid on the base paths, but getting to the point where we may need to start thinking seriously about getting some underperforming players out of the lineup and trying to jumpstart this roster a bit before we let the season get too far away from us, given that 56 games into the season, we're now more than a third of the way through. 5.5 behind in the division, as I noted, 2.5 out of the wild card. So given that in the preseason predictions, we were the only team in baseball expected to win 100 games, definitely has been a disappointing performance by our A's so far. Nobody on the A's is among the top league leaders in any of the primary offensive or pitching categories here in this somewhat disappointing 2039 season thus far. And given that the offense has been struggling, we have made a move and we have brought up the young infielder Juan Pimentel, the number 12 prospect in baseball. Just signed him to a 10-year extension and interested in seeing what he can do. He's continued to be dominant in AAA, hitting .355 with 18 homers, 43 ribbies, and 211 at-bats. So certainly nothing left for him to prove at that level. And unfortunately, to bring him up, we sent down Amare Alcindor, another good young infielder for us who we signed to an extension, but he has been not good offensively this year. Alcindor hitting just 211 for us this year with 2 home runs and 209 at-bats, a sickly 54 WRC plus, and he's been below replacement level. We're going to swap him out for Pimentel and hope that Pimentel can help jumpstart our offense a bit. Certainly think that Alcindor is going to be an important part of our future. We're going to train him up a bit at first base while he's down in AAA, but certainly don't think that Pimentel could perform any worse at the plate than Alcindor has here in 2039. And don't know if it's all Pimentel, a little bit of Pimentel, or completely coincidental, but we have been playing better over the first couple of weeks of the month of June. The record is now 35 and 32. Take a quick look at what the youngster Pimentel has done for us, and he has been pretty helpful. A 341 average in his first 10 major league games, 2 homers, 11 ribbies, and a 155 WRC plus. So certainly has been more productive offensively than what we had gotten used to having from Alcindor thus far this season. And we just finished off our best week of the season, swept 6 games against division rivals Houston and Texas on the road. So as we head into the final week and a half of the month of June, we've got a homestand against Colorado and Baltimore before we go on the road at Tampa Bay. Record up to 41 and 32 on the season after this great run. Still behind the Rangers in the division, but we're 2.5 up on the wild card, the final wild card spot at this point. So that's very positive. Definitely have turned things around with a 9-1 record in our last 10 and winning 6 in a row. Unfortunately, more bad news from the injury front. This one's going to be significant. The excellent catcher, Jorge Mendoza, going to be out with a torn abdominal muscle for about a month and a half. His batting average has dipped to 256, but he still has 13 doubles, 8 homers, and 32 ribbies for us. 124 WRC plus and a WAR of almost 2. So certainly not optimal to be losing Mr. Mendoza for the next month and a half. Hopefully we'll have him back early August. And with the injury to Mendoza, we're going to put Hidetaka Ogata into the lineup as our everyday catcher. Love his defense. But unfortunately, we didn't have a third catcher on the 40-man roster, and we didn't really have a catcher that I liked in AAA or AA. So we have reunited with an old friend. Just made a trade for Jaden Boakai, a longtime catcher in our organization who we traded away, or actually we just traded for. I believe we let him leave as a free agent this past year. We let him leave as a free agent. The primary asset we had to give up, we did give up a 4A pitcher and Chris Behrman. Had to give up Dan Jorgensen, who was a third-round pick of ours a few years ago. Left-handed pitcher who looks like he could be a useful back-of-the-rotation starter. 4-3 with a 4.50 ERA this year in high A ball at the age of 22. So certainly don't think he's going to be a great pitcher, but don't love giving him up. Boakai is just a rental for us. We got them to retain all of his contract and give us some cash as well. So that was positive. Boakai gives us a little more flexibility within the organization, though, since, as I mentioned, I didn't love whoever the third catcher was in our organization. Do really like one of our prospects, but he's not quite ready yet. Looking at player development, Jonah Richards is the 20th ranked prospect in baseball. We just promoted him while we were looking at this to AA. The 22-year-old hit 284 with 12 homers and 35 ribbies and 204 at-bats in high A ball. Honestly, his bat looks like he's not too far off from being major league quality, but felt like the jump from high A ball to the majors at the age of 22 might be a little bit aggressive, so we're going to try to manage his development a bit more traditionally, and we'll have Boakai as our backup in the major leagues for the time being. And as we head towards the midway point of the season with Boakai now backing up Ogata at catcher, we'll see if hopefully we can win at least 5 of these last 9 games we have here in the month of June. And we ended up with a 4-2 homestand, so 3 games left at Tampa before we get to the end of the month. 45-34 right now, 79 games into the season. Still second place, but 5.5 behind the Rangers, who continue to play some good baseball. They've won 4 in a row at this point, and they have the 3rd best record in baseball, just a half a game behind Tampa, and then they are 2 games worse than the Padres at this point. Won 9-5 against Baltimore yesterday, and our young, hopefully burgeoning superstar Juan Pimentel had a massive game, 5 for 5, single, RBI double, RBI single, and then 2 more singles in the 6th and the 8th, hitting .355 with 3 home runs and 17 ribbies in the first 22 games of his major league career. And unfortunately, we got swept in the final 3 games of the month against Tampa Bay. So we ended up going 4-5 over those last 9 games. So not quite what we wanted. As we sit here on July 1st, though, 82 games into the season, 45-37 record, 6 games back behind the Rangers in the division, 1 game up on a wild card. Really tight battle between the A's, the White Sox, and the Astros for those 3 wild card spots right now. Taking a look at the leaderboard, still nobody from our Oakland A's showing up with a really monster season. Obviously having the franchise, Mr. Ortega, on the injured list for a while longer probably isn't helping our ability to have someone have a monster season. Getting to our midseason evaluation at 45-37, Fisher seems content that we look like we're on target to make the playoffs. Unhappy that we have not acquired a Gold Glove winner. That said, still happy with our progress towards goals and delighted with our overall performance. Juan Pimentel had a monster first full month in the major leagues. .364 with 11 doubles and 3 homers since making his major league debut. So very glad to have him on board, giving us some offense by replacing Alcindor, and also hopefully helping justify that big contract that we signed him to before he had ever faced a single pitch in the major leagues. And things really turned around for us here in the month of June, a 17-9 record despite losing those last 3 games. We're still 4 worse than Pythagorean expectations. We're now 3rd in the American League in runs scored, 3rd in the American League in runs allowed, leading the AL in on-base percentage, WAR, WOBA, and walks. Good running team, 5th in steals and 2nd in base running, and good defensively, 4th in defensive efficiency and 3rd in zone rating. So all things being considered, given that we're still dealing with 3 very significant injuries to our starting center fielder, our starting catcher, and our previously number 4 starter in our rotation, the fact that we would be in the playoffs here on July 1st has to be viewed pretty positively. Check in on those injured guys. Ortega looks to be about 5 weeks away. Mendoza about 4 weeks away. And Blumenshine only about a week away from perhaps being able to begin a rehab assignment in AAA. And we'll take a look at our strong pitching staff first. Jesus Saldana having another really strong season for us, 7-1 record with a 2.83 ERA. His first 2 years in the majors led the AL in ERA as a rookie, led or actually tied for the league leading games started last year. Looks like he is on his way to another strong season for us as our number one starter. Chase Dora 6-3 on the year, although his ERA is over 2 runs worse this season than it was last year. Still have him for 1 year after this, with the Reds retaining most of his contract, but could be a guy at this point who ends up moving down out of that number 2 spot at some point. Doug Weiss certainly pressuring him there, 6-3 record with a 3.10 ERA, almost a 2 WAR on the season for the young right-hander. Weiss has always been looking for big money ever since we brought him on board, and 7 years, $150 million for a potential extension. So, given his fragility, we'll probably continue going year to year with him. Dave Baumler having an outstanding rookie season, 7-3 record with a 3.50 ERA for us. He moved into the number 4 spot when Blumenshine got hurt. Bobby Garland, unfortunately, similar to Kamani O'Banner, has been bad ever since he got into the rotation. On the season, 1-4 record with a 6.95 earned run average. Probably will just keep him in the spot for the time being, since we're hopefully getting close to having Blumenshine back. Chuck Huntley, after starting the season on the IL, has picked right up where he was a year ago as our closer. 15 saves, 1.63 ERA, 12.7 strikeouts per 9 innings, and he's already put up a 2 WAR for us. Mike Orozco, the stopper, having another really good season, 3.62 ERA over 69 2/3 innings, although he's barely been above replacement level this year, giving up 10 home runs and walked 29 batters in the 69 2/3 innings pitched that he has pitched. Daniel Blanco done a nice job after we signed him to an extension. ERA of just over 3 over 41 innings pitched. Almost 11 strikeouts per 9 innings for him. Kevin Carmichael had some injury issues earlier, but a 2.81 ERA over 25 2/3 innings for the left-hander. And Alan Hunsaker, who we signed as a free agent, 2-2 record with a couple of saves, mid-3s ERA over the 27 1/3 innings that he's pitched for us. Moving on to our middle relievers, Jonathan Shearer, 2-1 record, 3.29 ERA, almost 12 strikeouts per 9 innings for the former 15th round draft pick. Mike Ross, Rule 5 acquisition for us this year, has a 4.20 ERA over 30 innings pitched. And O'Banner, we already touched upon, has been much more effective out of the bullpen than as a starter. 3-3 record on the year with an ERA of just over 4 in 60 2/3 innings pitched. When we get Blumenshine back, we'll have some interesting decisions to make, assuming there are no injuries. Right now, my gut probably will be to send Garland down to AAA, where he spent a little time earlier this year. He is in his last option year, so we may look to take advantage of that. Don't really know who else I would send down. His performance over the course of this season has been significantly worse than anyone else on this major league pitching staff, at least in terms of his ERA. 2 runs per 9 innings worse than Dora, and almost 3 runs per 9 innings worse than Ross and O'Banner, who are the 2 relievers who have been the least effective. So feeling pretty confident about the rotation and the bullpen at this point. If there's a great deal to be had with a bargain on a big-time pitcher, certainly would look to add somebody, given that we are a win-now team. But right now, don't think that there's really a ton that we need to change and improve upon with this pitching staff. And as we talked about, the offense has gotten a lot better over the last month as well. Boakai, the new addition, 0 for 1 in his only at bat, so have not seen much of Jaden in his reunion with the Oakland A's. Ogata, batting just 235 this year, 3 homers and 11 ribbies, but you may remember he had those 3 home runs very early in the season, so has not done too much since then. Been a below average offensive player, but still more than half a win above replacement thanks to his outstanding defense. Turning to our infielders, first baseman Jake Bowers having a respectable offensive season, but certainly would have hoped for more. 258 average with 8 homers and 44 ribbies and 291 at-bats. 111 WRC plus. At 33 years old, does look like he's beginning to regress a little bit. We did get the Red Sox to keep a really big chunk of his contract, 60% of it when we picked him up. But we've got him in the lineup right now because he's still a solid offensive player and he does have that captain personality, but could be a guy that we look to move on from at some point down the line, given the number of good young players coming up through our organization. DH Juan Ramos, almost certainly in his final year with us. 248 average, 17 homers and 51 ribbies, 123 WRC plus and a 1 WAR. He's looking for pretty big money for an extension, wants $26 million a year over 7 years. Feel like we've gotten some really good years from him since we picked him up in that trade with Seattle, and likely to let him move on after this season. Sam Lishman has been a utility infielder for us this year, hitting a .174, just 23 at-bats. Only started 3 games for us. Certainly not a big part of our future as a guy who made his major league debut this year at the age of 28. Other utility infielder is Rodney Mesidor. He's played a bit more, 273 average and 55 at-bats. Been slightly above replacement level as a utility infielder for us. Andy Toribio, second baseman / shortstop, hitting 273 and 271 at-bats, 8 homers, 40 ribbies. The 108 WRC plus is the best he's put up in several seasons. His 2.1 WAR at the midway point is already a little higher than what he did a year ago. Juan Pimentel, we've talked a lot about him in this episode, hitting 364 in his first 107 major league at-bats. Has walked only 6 times. We knew that he was not going to draw a ton of walks, but if he continues to hit in the mid-300s, we're not going to complain about that. And last but not least among the infielders, Alejandro Landin playing short and second for us this year. Another very strong season, hitting 285, 19 homers and 52 ribbies, 142 WRC plus and a 2.8 WAR here at the midway point of the season. Flea Landin still signed for potentially 3.5 more years with that contract we gave him when he was a youngster. Moving on to the outfielders, and this is where we will definitely be helped once Ortega is back and healthy. Mike Alanis has moved into a utility outfielder role for us this year, hitting just a .195 with only 3 home runs and 113 at-bats. 67 WRC plus, barely been above replacement level for us. Thought we might have gotten a really useful bat when we made that trade with the Cubs a year and a half ago to bring him on board. But honestly, it looks like he's a guy who is better on paper than he is in real life, at least thus far. Darnell Selvey, the youngster, hitting 258 with 10 doubles, 8 homers, and 31 ribbies and 194 at-bats. Put up a 119 WRC plus for us thus far this season. The number 39 prospect in baseball is former first-round pick of ours and likely to be with us for the foreseeable future. Have thought about a contract extension with him, but 8 years, looking for almost $100 million. Not necessarily a bargain. So probably we'll just continue to see what he does and enjoy the minimum salary years in those early arbitration years. Sergio Palomares has been our everyday center fielder since Ortega got hurt. Unfortunately, the offense remains disappointing, hitting just .236 on the season for us. Does have 19 doubles and 4 triples, and he's stolen 20 bases. So he's just below a league average offensive player and has put up a 2.3 WAR for us thanks to some pretty solid defense and that strong performance on the base paths. And last but not least, Arturo Uresti. The batting average not great at .239, but he does have 16 homers and 45 ribbies at the midway point of the season. 116 WRC plus for us and a 2.1 WAR. So certainly would love to have Ortega back in the lineup. We'll certainly like it when Mendoza is back in the lineup. Don't know that there's any huge holes that we need to fill at this point. Certainly would think as we get closer to the playoffs and into the playoffs, should have Amare Alcindor back from AAA, and certainly would think that Alcindor would likely take Lishman's spot on a potential playoff roster for us. And speaking of Mr. Alcindor, he's got a sprained wrist that he suffered just yesterday that's going to have an impact on him for 3 weeks, so that's not great. But he has at least gotten the bat going in AAA Las Vegas, hitting .333 over 87 at-bats, 6 homers and 21 ribbies. As I mentioned, he's a guy who certainly would be on the playoff roster over the likes of Mesidor, as well as Lishman, but for the time being, we'll keep Psycho in AAA. Hopefully he'll get healthy, and certainly would be a September call-up for us, and with the likelihood that we will be moving on from Ramos this upcoming offseason and potentially Bowers down the line, think that there still should eventually be plenty of at-bats for Landin, Pimentel, Toribio, and Alcindor in the not-too-distant future. And with that, we'll call it an episode. Glad to see the team playing better here over the month of June. Next time around, we will sim up to the first-year player draft, take a look at the options available there, and hopefully get some thoughts from the Worldwide Scouting Department on which direction we may want to go in the draft. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.